a dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. Got to move fast because...
All right, so Donald Trump referred to Zelensky as a dictator, and because of this, we have a ton of new meltdowns. Now, what's unique about this situation is that we also have a lot of Donald Trump supporters, Republicans, and conservatives not be a fan with how Donald Trump describes Zelensky and is handling the situation. So before we start this video, please like the video. It helps out so much, and it also helps other people see the video as well. Let us begin.
When it comes to Russia, Americans don't trust Russia as far as they can throw them. I mean, my goodness gracious, favorable view of Russia. You go back to 2020, Kate, it's 28%. 2022 dropped to 15%. In 2024, just 8% of Americans hold a favorable view of Russia. To put this in context, about as many Americans believe that we faked the moon landing as have a favorable view of Russia.
Wait until you see this next statistic. It's going to blow your mind, but it also shows you how big of a hurdle Donald Trump has to get over as far as gain support, really also from the Republican Party as well.
I think this kind of puts in a context about how Americans feel about Russia when matched up against Ukraine. Ukraine using U.S. weapons in Russia. Take a look here. 52% of Americans support that idea compared to just 43% who oppose. Even Republicans are split on this question, basically 50-50, 49% to 49%.
So as you can see, the numbers are quite complicated when you compare support for Ukraine and not liking Russia. I'm really curious. Leave your comments down below how you feel about this particular situation.
And some of his comments sounded straight from a Russian propaganda playbook. Rather than acknowledge Vladimir Putin's role in starting this war, President Trump amazingly blamed Ukraine for Putin's invasion.
I figure Russia's lost 900,000 soldiers. I think that Ukraine's lost probably 700,000. And it's a terrible thing. You'll see bodies and body parts all over the field, all over. We see them very accurately through satellites. I love Ukraine, but Zelensky has done a terrible job. His country is shattered, and millions of people have unnecessarily died.
Now, the mainstream media is not talking about this. You also have Elon Musk going in on Zelensky. Elon says Zelensky cannot claim to represent the will of the people of Ukraine unless he restores freedom of the press and stops canceling elections. Oh, and by the way, JD Vance is also going in on Zelensky. JD Vance warns Zelensky he will regret bad-mouthing Trump and condemns his atrocious response to peace talks. So as you can see, you got Trump, you got JD Vance, and you got Elon. They are all going after Zelensky and this particular conflict with Ukraine versus Russia as well.
But what they did in Munich with President Zelensky was primarily to bully them, right? The Secretary of Treasury handed him a piece of paper that essentially required Ukraine to hand over about 50% of its mineral reserves to the United States, simply in payment of the support that we've already given, which we've given because they were a democratic country attacked by Putin and the Russian forces.
So to give you guys some context, this is what really started the bad blood between Zelensky and Donald Trump, because they've always been cool, but all of a sudden you see this turn in attitude when Zelensky gets handed this deal. According to him, he didn't like it, and also he felt a little insulted by the deal. Again, you guys can leave your opinions down below how you feel about it. I just wanted to give you guys some context as to why we have a beef between Donald Trump and Zelensky.
I don't think anyone should be really, criticizing the president for trying to drive this to a diplomatic solution. And what he said yesterday and today is, why hasn't President Zelensky tried to end this war for the betterment of his country?
Look, I love to give you guys the total picture and all of the context as far as arguments, and it looks like the main narrative and argument as far as support for Donald Trump and what he says is that why has Zelensky not come to the table? Why has there been zero effort, it looks like, to have some sort of peace agreement? What is going on? Again, you guys can form your own opinions surrounding all of this.
It is our internal matter, and we are acting according to Ukrainian constitution. It should not be questioned by anyone. And I would state it again, anyone outside of our country. You know, Ukraine is very good in telling our presidents if they are not welcomed, or if they overstayed their welcome, or if they are doing something that is not suitable for Ukraine's nation. But right now, we are standing united because we are fighting the external enemy.
All right, that is a member of parliament from Ukraine. We are already seeing members of government from Ukraine starting to appear on American television as far as media and news, trying to educate the people that, look, we have a constitution and we have laws and we stand united. I just wanted to give you guys the story from Ukraine's side because this is what they are saying. If you are unaware, Donald Trump said this. Think of it, a modestly successful comedian, Volodymyr Zelensky, talked the United States of America into spending $350 billion to go into a war that couldn't be won, that never had to start, but a war that he, without the US and Trump, will never be able to settle. The United States has spent $200 billion more than Europe, and Europe's money is guaranteed, while the United States will get nothing back. Why didn't sleepy Joe Biden demand equalization in that this war is far more important to Europe than it is to us? We have a big, beautiful ocean as separation. On top of this, Zelensky admits that half of the money we sent him is missing. He refuses to have elections. He is very low in Ukrainian polls, and the only thing he was good at was playing Biden like a fiddle, a dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast, or he is not going to have a country left. In the meantime, we are successfully negotiating an end to the war with Russia, something all admit only Trump and the Trump administration can do. Biden never tried, Europe has failed to bring peace, and Zelensky probably wants to keep the gravy train going. I love Ukraine, but Zelensky has done a terrible job.
How concerned should we all be about the leader of the free world repeating Russian talking points?
The president turned history upside down here. We all know what happened 3 years ago. This week, the Russians invaded Ukraine. You can make arguments about whether or not the Ukrainians had done anything to provoke it, but the fact of the matter was it was an illegal invasion into the country.
So for conservatives and Republicans, this seems to be the #1 talking point as far as why they don't support Donald Trump in this particular situation. It's the whole Ukraine started the war when, objectively speaking, the United States took the stance that Russia started the war illegally, and this gave justification to start handing money and equipment and training over to Russia. Again, you guys can leave your opinions down below. I hate to sound like a broken record, but there are so many different talking points here. I want to give you guys the full picture.
Well, first of all, it's a good decision. It's amazing to me that Donald Trump has to go to court to fight off attempts to keep the duly elected president and his appointees from having access to the federal government. I mean, this is, after all, the people that we elected to run the country, and they have to go into court and fight to run the country. I mean, it sounds crazy. So I think it was the only decision she could make, because it's patently ridiculous when Democrat attorneys general go to partisan judges, or any judges for that matter, and try to stop the duly elected government from operating. That's #1. #2, this effort is nothing more than an attempt to control the federal bureaucracy and restore some political oversight to the federal government. That is all they are trying to do. So ultimately, I think people are happy with it, and I think they're finding some things that need to be uncovered. And the more that they're transparent about that, and the more they put that information out to the American people, the more popular it's going to become. How can you make any other decision than the one that she made? He's the president. These are his appointees going into the federal agencies that they were elected to run. So what does it matter what he said is a matter of a political statement before, as long as the result here is they get to run the federal government just like the people asked for?
Now, what Scott Jennings described is essentially the legal battle and hurdle that Donald Trump had to get through as far as going through the court systems and gaining access to the federal government. As ridiculous as that sounds, that Donald Trump would need permission from judges to access the federal government, Donald Trump officially has approval. But this is mainly a good thing for DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, so they can start to unveil and uncover some things that we cannot believe is even happening. But what I want to point out is that this is the #1 thing probably holding the entire Trump organization together right now, and also with Elon Musk's team, a lot of people, the majority of Americans, actually agree and love what Elon is doing and Donald Trump as far as uncovering the truth and the behind the scenes of the waste and fraud.
I think the issue is they're not whacking enough. There's this concept in private equity when you get a bankrupt company and you go in there, you cut 20% more than your initial read. And then you find like a pool of mercury, the organization gels back together again. Always cut deeper, harder when there's fat and waste. The FAA, it's not the people. The code is cobalt. It's from the 60s. It needs CapEx put into it for the technology to be upgraded to make it safer. Fat like a chicken. All of these agencies are like big fat chickens dripping over barbecues of fat. This is the best barbecue I've ever seen, but I don't think it's happening fast enough. They're not cutting enough. Keep slashing, keep hacking while you have a 24-month mandate before the midterms. Cut. More cutting. Believe me, it's going to work out just great. Everybody should be happy.
Even people with the nuclear codes, cut them too?
Cut everything. Because if you don't see what they're doing and they can't show you that they're adding value, you whack.
But
this is the first time I've ever seen Scott Jennings just sit there and let the co-anchor just cook. I mean, that is Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. He does love to talk. However, that might be the top 5 greatest monologues I have seen so far in 2025. Comparing agencies that are wasting taxpayer dollars and doing some sketchy things to fat chickens spilling all over barbecue, etc. Amazing analogy. But Kevin O'Leary really does have a point, and he really is resonating with Americans. People are just sick and tired of what's going on. And I really just wanted to play that full clip for you guys to show you how intense Kevin O'Leary gets on CNN.
Like Pete Hegseth got the job because he's the weekend news anchor on Fox, and Donald Trump watches a lot of Fox. And so he decided to make that guy the head of the Department of Defense and our chief negotiator in Ukraine. Pete Hegseth is screwing it up badly, but of course he is. He has no experience negotiating with anybody. All he knows how to do is read the news. So nobody should be surprised that this national security cabinet is badly mismanaging the early stages of this negotiation and are going to end up in a settlement that ultimately likely gets a lot of Americans killed in the medium and long run.
So here's where things get complex. This really is going to be the make it or break it moment for Pete Hegseth as far as his ability as the Secretary of Defense to get the job done. Negotiations between the adversaries of the United States and the allies of the United States, to include the other countries in Europe in which we have been allies with some of them for a very, very long time. I also want to point out the mission statement, or really what Pete Hegseth seems to want to focus on, is China. However, this is the first big hurdle he really has to get through as far as his make it or break it moment, trying to get a peace deal going, or at least try to facilitate some peace in general.
Arizona voters who switched from voting for Joe Biden in 2020 to Trump in 2024, and so far, they mostly like what they see.
I just think he's trying to get America back on track as quickly as possible, given the state that it was left in from the previous administration.
It feels more merit and transparency that I'm getting from the administration so far.
I approve of a lot of the stuff that he's doing with the border and everything.
He's put other countries on notice that were to be taken seriously.
All 11 Biden-Trump voters say they approve of Donald Trump's first weeks in office.
My favorite part of that clip is at the very, very last second, that news anchor just kind of smirks like, are you kidding me? These guys actually like Donald Trump. However, this is a very good thing to point out for this video, is that Donald Trump still has a ton of support. However, as I make this video, full transparency, we don't know what's going to happen in the near future. According to Scott Jennings from CNN, he thinks by the midterms we will have a pretty solid foundation on whether or not people really support Donald Trump or don't support Donald Trump, but it's just way too early to call. However, it is a little shocking, I will admit, that Donald Trump is kind of going in on Zelensky, and Zelensky's going in on Donald Trump this early in, and we haven't even started the full negotiations yet as I make this video.
Go away.
Right.
So it just keeps coming at you because Elon just keeps turning it on. And, you know, people say, oh, he overpaid for Twitter. I don't think so anymore. People see it all through the U.S. and around the world and say, this is nuts. And it just fuels what else is out there. So what's happening here has never happened before. He could only do this with the power of the executive behind him because all of the people that are managing these mandates and these programs are being embarrassed by this. Whether you just got the job or whether you were there in the Biden administration, Elon doesn't care who you are. He just publishes it anyways, and then it's all over your face. There's a lot of tension going on here with the management of these programs, and particularly when we start talking with the FAA and the Pentagon. I mean, oh, baby, wait till that one comes out.
Alright, so if you are still watching this video, I really appreciate it. There are so many clips coming in, so many different storylines, so many meltdowns. We have to cover them all for you guys. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you for being here. I couldn't do it without you guys. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm becoming a really big Kevin O'Leary fan as far as his meltdowns and as far as what he has to say on the news. I'll see you guys later.